Tov, good morning. Happy post Hanukkah. Let me just move this here. No, thank you very much. This and yes. Okay. Today, of course, learning for the Zchut for Lilu Nishama for Avigdor Chai Avram ben Meretzi Rachalea, and also today for Refuah Shlema for Sarah Bat Etachaya. She should have Refuah Shlema, the Karov. We are going to start on page 39, and now that Eric's here, we can actually start. How you doing, Eric? We start on page 39. We're going to start now in the next chapter, chapter 7, Perek Zion. We talked until now to understand what was the makeup of Zvizut. And once again, for those of you who've been not here, have listened, haven't heard, we're only just translating the word Zvizut as alacrity because there's no real word in English for this. But it means doing something quickly, efficiently, completely, and that's more what we're going to look at today. What is it made up of? What really is Zvizut? And we know that we have many expressions that we use, and he's going to mention, for example, Zvizin Makdimin the mitzvot, and we talk about Emizarzin Elamishe Zariz. Again, if you're not familiar with those expressions, we'll see them, but it's part of our parlance, it's part of our language that we use when we talk about doing mitzvot. So let's take a look on page 39 in the little printing, and if you don't have that, it's the beginning of Perek Zion. Be'ur or Be'ur Chelkei Zrizut. So the question would be that this chapter is going to address is, when do you have to be a zariz? What does it mean? We sort of saw what it means, but not in depth yet. But what is it? When do you have to be zariz? So interestingly enough, what would you say, without looking at the text for a moment, what would you say, when do you have to be zariz? So if you're going to go to Super Soul, you have to do that with zvizut.
Why not? Because then it frees you up to do other things that are as important, but perhaps that some people don't think are.
So would you just play devil's advocate now? Because sure. Judy said that that everything, you should be a zariz in everything.
I think when it comes to mitzvot, when it comes to doing a mitzvah, good deed.
Okay, good. Okay, so you're narrowing it. There's two Judys. So the Judy on Zoom says it's when it comes to doing mitzvot. The Judy in live is saying with everything. Okay, so that is actually what I would expect people to say. But most people did not say what Mesilat Yesharim says. Let's take a look. There are two aspects to when one has to be a zariz. One is before the act, before the mitzvah itself. Whoa, that's kind of a strange statement. And one is after the mitzvah. What does that even mean? We'll have to wait and see. Before the beginning of the mitzvah means he shouldn't allow the mitzvah to pass. It means like he shouldn't miss out on the mitzvah. But when the time comes to do a mitzvah, or the hizdamnut, the opportunity presents itself to do the mitzvah, or when he thinks about doing a certain mitzvah, he should quickly move to do this action, to take hold of it, do it, and shouldn't let time pass in the meantime. So notice what he's talking about here. He said three things actually. He said when the time comes to do the mitzvah, bonagid, light candles, put on tefillin, whatever it might be, or the hizdamnut happens to present itself. There's an opportunity to do a mitzvah. You're on a bus and someone's struggling with packages. There's the hizdamnut. There's an opportunity. And this person's not feeling so good. I probably should send them a message to see how they're doing. Comes up in your mind. Do it. Take action. So three different starting ideas here. He's telling us when one person should be zariz. And also he warns us, as he's already told us in the previous chapter, that one of the enemy is time. Don't let time pass. I'm sure everyone sitting here, and myself included, has thought of plenty of times, I should do this. I should call so-and-so. I should message so-and-so. And then the next thing happens and, you get distracted and, I really should have called that person. I should have told them something. And you don't. There's no greater danger that prevents one from doing a mitzvah than time. that happens, it renews every moment. It constantly, there's this renewal of something else that can get in the way of doing a mitzvah. As they say, truth. That really is so true. How? If you have and Buddy's like telling us his opinion, right? It's okay. Dog barking in the background. When you have a chance to do something and you're thinking about doing it, or you're on your way to do it, very often what will happen is you'll get, as I said, distracted. And what does that mean, get distracted? Things that come up. Legitimately, sometimes things come up, or your mind wanders. And then there's this passage of time, and you say, oh, the moment passed. You've heard this expression in English, the moment passed. Okay, I'll get to it. I'll do it a different time. Now he's going to give us a paragraph here of multiple expressions, examples. I wrote down, I think there's 6 of them here. Yeah, 6 things, some of which I'll go in a little bit more depth, others I'll just kind of mention. So the Chachamim have told us multiple situations. One, the beginning of Sefer Melachim Aleph, when David is lying basically on his deathbed. He's old, he's dying, he's coming to the end of his life. And he tells Benayahu, he talks about Shlomo, his son. He says, take him down to Gichon in order to anoint him to become the next king, to become the king. But and Benayahu answers him. He says, Amen. Ken Yomar Hashem. Amru zu leshonam. Okay, that's what they said. This is what's this zrizut business there? What's the big deal? Take a look. Rabbi Pinchas b'shem Rabbi Chanan the Tzipori. Rabbi Pinchas has said in the name of Rabbi Chanan of Tzipori, Halo kvar ne'emar, it's already written in Divrei Yamim. Hine ben nolad lach hu yiyeh ish benucha. It says even in Divrei Yamim, and David HaMelech was already told that his son is going to become the king. And in Divrei Yamim, it actually says that he's going to have a son named Shlomo, who's going to become king. So why is he telling Benayahu, hurry, go quickly and take him to Gichon, and giving him detailed instructions? And Benayahu responds, Amen, like, yeah, I'm on it right now. It's going to be. It's what Hashem said it's going to be. So why does he have to do this to Lizareh Zoto, to like kind of make him do this with alacrity? A lot of things happen. Things come up between now and then. Something could happen. You're on the way there, and suddenly you realize there's a sale at Machsanei Chashmal in D City, right? So he's going to go there, and then he's not going to go to Gichon, and that's going to get delayed. Yes, it's Mina Shamayim. Hashem has already said he's going to become the king, but maybe something will happen. It'll delay the inevitable. Secondly, Torah says that one should, this is where we get the idea of Shmura Matzah, right? That we know that by Pesach time, that one has to have Shmura Matzah to be Miyotze the mitzvah on the night of Pesach. There is no mitzvah to eat matzah except on the night of Pesach. Similarly, a word I cannot say, there's no mitzvah to eat in a sukkah all week of Sukkot except the night of Sukkot. There's no chiyuv. Sorry, thank you. Very good connection. Good correction. You don't get a mitzvah for eating matzah during the week, but you do get a mitzvah for eating in the sukkah. Thank you. Good hara. But there's no requirement to eat in the sukkah, nor is there a requirement to eat matzah during the week. But on the night of Sukkot, you have to eat in the sukkah, and on the night of Pesach, you have to eat a kazayit of more than that, of shmura matzah. So they take a play on words. When it says ushmartem et hamatzot, they also say ushmartem et hamitzvot, right? Mitzvah haba'a liyadcha al tachmitzena. Again, for the word chametz. Don't let it sour. Don't let it go that the time passes. You're going to miss it. You'll see that lahavdi. You'll see in advertisements. Lo lachmitz. Don't miss out. Don't let it go to waste. And how you waste that time and not do what you need to do. V'amru, and furthermore, they said, lo lam yakdim adam lidvar mitzvah. Person should always try to as early as possible to do a mitzvah. Shalfihi gdima b'chivad tzira zachta b'kadma arba'a dorot b'Yisrael lemalchut. This is have to do with the daughters of Lot. Going to get into the whole story. It also tells us this is the phrase I mentioned already at the beginning of the class, that a person who should be a zariz and a person who is zariz was lahakdim the mitzvah. What does that mean? What does it mean lahakdim the mitzvah? Makdimin the mitzvah. We all approach a mitzvah in our own way. And some of you have heard me mention Rabbi Yisachar Frand over the years in my teaching. He's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant Talmud Chacham and a magnificent speaker. He has a shiur, I was going to say tape because that's how I first heard him. He has a shiur. Actually, I have to digress with a very brief story. When he was first, for those who don't know who he is, and remind me, I'm coming back to this mitzvah right here. Many, many, many years ago, I'm saying probably 25 years ago, I started to hear about him and understood that what he did was there was a shiur that was Motzei Shabbat for kids in his the shul he was a member, that the fathers would bring their sons for Mishnah Shir on Motzei Shabbat, on the long Motzei Shabbat. So they would bring their kids. Instead of going back and forth, they kind of said the fathers sat around the Beit Midrash learning, and he said, "Even Klar, we're here. Let's learn." So he said, "What are we going to learn?" So for some reason, he decided he's going to learn nothing. That mushroomed into the world's largest shiur, that he has literally thousands of people online live every Motzei Shabbat from after Sukkot until before Pesach. When it first started, it was just on tapes. So you get the tapes and you listen to him, and there was a member of my shul who was a cousin of his, and he was bringing the tapes in. I was listening to magnificent stuff, but it was a regular cassette tape. And he only spoke in New York. It's the only place it's where he lived, and he says, "I stay here, I live here, I speak here, I don't travel." Finally, somehow, I was able to, through his cousin, he was coming to Chicago for a wedding, to ask him if he would please come to our shul and speak and give a shiur there. So and he agreed. So when I introduced him, I said, this is history being made today for two reasons. First, he's speaking for the first time outside New York. And second, it's the first time that we people here are listening to him in the middle of the shiur. We don't have to turn him upside down, because we turn the tape upside down. So he got a good laugh out of that one, at least, thankfully. In any case, he has one tape called My Favorite Mitzvah. And what's it about? Think about it. We all connect in one way or another to different mitzvahs. Some we quote, do better, like more, connect to more, and some less so. But some people, enough, if not all, have this one mitzvah that for some reason they go on that. They don't say that. You should say they go with it, right? That they really, with all their gusto, they want to know the best way to do the mitzvah. They do the mitzvah as best as possible. They learn about that mitzvah, and they really get into that one mitzvah. And he's always his thesis in that particular message was that we should do all the mitzvot we can, but at least one to try to do the best as you can. More, obviously. So what does it mean, Zrizin Makdimin the mitzvot? I actually remember where I came from here, is that with all mitzvot, as best as possible, you want to be the first to do it. You want to be on it as soon as possible. And notice the words. It doesn't say Makdimin the mitzvot. It says Zrizin Makdimin the mitzvot. What does that even mean? A person innately, we said, is lazy. Okay, most people would prefer just sitting around and not doing something. Some people just can't do that. They have to be moving all the time. And I'm not talking about ADD and ADHD and all the other Ds. Okay, I'm just talking about nature right now. Because remember, Hashem made us, we are from the Adamah, we're from the earth. And therefore, we talked about earth, wind, fire, and water, that the midah, the character trait represented by earth, is kvedut, is heaviness and laziness and stationary and stagnation. And someone who's overcoming that, he's a zariz. Someone who's really, that they try to work on that in their nature. So someone who's a zariz, there's a way to express that, and that's l'hakdim mitzvah, to try and do the mitzvah as quickly, as soon as possible. As far as quickly, we're going to talk about that in a moment. Continue. Furthermore, they said, you may not know this, but it's asur to run on Shabbat. You're not allowed to, except if you're running to shul or you're running to learn. In those cases, you're allowed to. But I have seen, by the way, it's also a mitzvah to run to shul in general. Now, it doesn't mean you should be going jogging to shul. You can. But what I have seen, although I haven't really seen it in the last few years, I've noticed over the years in different communities that there are people who walk to shul, and just before they get to shul, they run the last few steps. That's also kind of cool. Okay, that's showing your desire to really get there. So a person should run to do a mitzvah. It's meant in the literal sense and in the figurative sense, and even on Shabbat. He will guide us eternally. And the word almut in one word means youth. Like bizvizut, as if we were really young. Like even my own daughter's wedding, but even in general, I go to a wedding and I watch the 20-year-olds dancing. It's like, whoa, I used to have that kind of energy, and I used to be able to do this dancing, but I mean, okay, you get older and you slow down a little bit, but he says that you should do the mitzvah like the youth. Betoch alamot tofefot. Ki hazvizut hi midat shlemut gadol. Because the midah of zvizut is about shlemut, about completion. Asher tivo shel adam mona'a mimenu ata. That the person's nature prevents it from the person doing it. Again, where the mitzvah needs to be done and needs to be done properly and to be done completely, our nature works against us. And whoever does get a hold of this and overcomes that, to the best of his ability, he'll certainly in the future world, in the next world, truly be zochet in truth to what he's done. Hashem pays us, quote unquote, commensurate with our investment into the mitzvah. We do not do mitzvot to get reward. Banish that thought from your heads. We do mitzvot because we are Ovdei Hashem. We serve Hashem. Hashem wants us to serve Him. We serve Hashem. We know from Pirkei Avot. Don't be like a student who does the action to get the amanat the kabel pras in order to get a prize, but do it shalom amanat the kabel pras, right? So you don't do it to get the reward. Is it nice to get? Is it good to get? Yeah, but that's not why we do the mitzvah. He's telling us you have to do the best you can, right? So Rav Abiner tells us the following. Klal Gadol, he says in this particular sentence on the Mesilat Yesharim, Eincha yachol lasot hakol. Dude, you can't do it all. Ata basar v'adam, you're only human. Ela aseh kechol yecholtecha, but do the best you can. V'ata she'ar yashlim hakadosh baruch hu, and the rest God will fill in. Eincha yachol lilmod Torah yom v'layla. You cannot physically learn Torah day and night. Lamad kechol she'bechochacha lilmod, but doesn't mean you can't learn. And shouldn't learn, do the best you can. You can't do a complete, maybe 100% tshuva, because you don't really know how deep the chet itself bored itself into your neshama. But I say, do what you're able to do, the best you can do. Meaning, it also says in Pirkei Avot, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, right? Ve'enata ben chorin libatel mimena. You don't have to finish the job, but you can't say, I'm free from it. I can't do it at all, right? The famous story of the man who's planting a carob tree, and he says, why are you planting a tree? You're not going to 70 years till you're going to get the, That's right. Nahum. It says, Kach et livni. It's like, I'm planting for my son. There's a future. I can't see the fruits from this. I'm not going to see the fruit from this. But my next generation, the next generation will, right? Same thing with my own personal persona. I need to make sure that maybe I won't be able to finish what I need to finish. Maybe I won't. I have all these great plans in my head of things I want to teach and things I want to do. And it's up to Hashem that's going to happen. In my Tanya class last night, I mentioned that I still have a deal with God. I need to live to be 35,000 years old. And this way I can at least scratch the surface of really things I want to learn and do. I don't think he's still just laughing. He's got a good sense of humor. Anyways, but we said that zvizut takes its form in two ways. One is before the mitzvah, and one is after the mitzvah. What does that even mean? Let's take a look. Now notice the difference in the word. If you turn back for a second, the beginning of the chapter, it says, the very first sentence, there are two parts to zvizut. And one is after the ma'aseh. So it sounds like once you finish the mitzvah, then there's still zvizut involved, but that's not what he's saying. Here's the clarification. He meant not achar, and he meant why he wrote it exactly like that. I haven't been able to find an answer, but here's what he means. What does it mean, zvizut? Now, after you began the mitzvah, shekevan she'achaz b'mitzvah yimaher la'ashlim otah. Once you've taken hold of that mitzvah, you should hurry to complete the mitzvah. Now, doesn't that sound like you should put on your tefillin as fast as possible, daven as fast as possible, eat in the sukkah as fast as possible? That's not what he means at all. We'll see in a moment. And you shouldn't lighten yourself with the mitzvah, meaning just like do it just to get it over with, as if someone who desires to throw away the mitzvah or to the burden. There's a halacha, you're not allowed to daven standing at the doorway of the shul, for example, or the door of an exit, because it looks like I can't wait to get out of here. You're not allowed to do that. Now, I really wanted, some things over the years I really wanted to do, and I never did. If you look at a basketball court, it's like, what's he talking about basketball? I think it's called the key, like where the top of where they stand for the line for the three free throws. Say 3 free throws. Try that. Okay, so that little line shows a certain area where I guess you can't stand to guard the net. Or I don't know the rules. So the entryway to the shul where I was, so where I sat was in the front of the shul, very American looking out, and I'm looking at the entrance of the shul, and all the time there are people, plenty empty seats. People will stand, here's the door, like they're right here at the door, in the doorway or right next to it. So I wanted to draw a key like that, like a half circle with it, like an X, like don't stand here. I never did it. Wouldn't go too well. But in any case, you don't want to do the mitzvah like you're trying to get rid of the mitzvah. There's a famous story of the Chernobyl Rebbe. I think it was. He said it in a sarcastic way, but it's also sad. He said that someone came to him with what he said was the hardest shiloh he's ever had. What was the shiloh? He said that he came to the Rebbe. He said, I was in a place where they have multiple minyanim, different rooms. And I had my shel yad on, my tefillin on my arm, and I had my shel rosh in my hand. And I didn't remember if I just finished davening with that many and I was taking my shel rosh off, or I was about to start davening, I was putting it on. What do I do? Okay, now, whether the story actually happened or not is immaterial. But it points up the idea that sometimes we're just so disconnected from the actual mitzvah that we're not even sure we're even doing it. I'm sure I know I have when you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei, like, did I say that bracha? Where am I? It happens. We get distracted. We're out of focus. And he's telling us that we have to worry and we have to focus on it. Ella, what we should do, rather we should be concerned, which means afraid, that we won't be able to complete the mitzvah. Now, before I read that, I'm going to read a couple lines from Avinu again. What does this mean? To do the mitzvah, Yemaher lahashlim ota. You should hurry to complete the mitzvah. Hitchalta b'mitzvah. You started a mitzvah. Hamshech v'hashlem ota. Continue and complete the mitzvah. Bizrizut u'bitlahavut pnimit. With an inner drive, with an inner desire and burning to do this. B'cheshek, with again, lo ka'avodah kablanit. Not like a kablan. No, I'm going to do the work, move on to the next job site. What does it mean? You should do it. He's the miyirato. Like just the last sentence I read. He's darez lasota shalom anat lihipater mimena. You do it. You approach the mitzvah in a way. You do it quickly, but not in the sense that you want to get it over with. Al ta'aseh tfilatcha keva. Don't make your tefillah keva. It means routine. Don't make it routine. Chayavim lihitpalel. You have to daven. V'chein tov. Good. Mitpalim maher. Hitamlut tefillin. Good. Daven. You'll say, you daven quickly, and hitamlut tefillin he says it in quotes, like do the tefillin exercise, like wrap it on, take it off. U'mesayimim, and you're finished. Okay. Not so. Ani ohev litpalel, ani rotzeh lebi tefillah. I want to daven. I want tefillah in my life. Meaning it's also based on an approach, how we approach a mitzvah. There's an expression that's used in Yiddish. When you want to say that something you did it quickly, you could say abgedavent, right? Which is terrible because I daven through it real fast. It reflects on the idea that that person's davening means it's 1, 2, 3. You did it particularly. How do you do it? We abgedavent that house, whatever it is. V'amru, and they said, Ein ha-mitzvah nikret ela al shem gomra. If multiple people are involved in a mitzvah, the mitzvah is called by the one who finishes the mitzvah, that so-and-so did the mitzvah. Now, that doesn't mean that if 10 people volunteer for something, that only the last volunteer is the one who's noted as being the one who did the project. But it means that the concept of shlemut, the concept of completion, of making sure something is taken care of, something is finished. It doesn't just mean that the last guy in. It means the one who sees it to completion. Take an example. You're going to build a mikveh, and there's a mikveh committee, and there's people, and they're raising funds, and they find a location, and they get the architect, and they start to. And as time goes on, this one falls off the committee, and this one has a baseball game, and this one's too tired. Okay, fine. So you're down. By the way, in every single area of Jewish life, of organizational life, you always have, whether it's a shul, a school, any situation of Jewish organizational life. I imagine it's true in the non-Jewish world too. There's always certain people who step up, right? It's always the busier people. It's the people that they're always volunteering for things. They're always on committees. They're always doing. So that's good. You have this committee, and you have a few other people are on it. And then as the committee wanes, it gets less and less and less and less. You still have this one person, this woman who feels like this is necessary, this man who feels, and they go for it. They keep going and going until it's finished. That's the person who saw that mitzvah through completion. Everyone has a chilek in that. But the one who completed, saw it to its conclusion, is you say, oh, what so-and-so did, it's unbelievable. They brought it to a conclusion. And that's how we deal with every single mitzvah. We are the ones that bring the mitzvah to a conclusion, to do it the right way, not to rush through it, and to do it appropriately. But we're not even talking now about kavan. We're not even talking about intention and how we think and what we do the mitzvah. That's a different class. That's Tanya will come to. And he'll deal with it a little bit, but not in great depth. If you see a person who is working diligently, who's quick, he'll stand before kings. He will not appear before the lowly. Meaning, again, like I said before, you want something. It's an old saying. You want something done, you give it to someone who's busy. Because someone who's busy values time, and they can always find something in order to put time. Now, are you all familiar with the story, the mashal about the mason jar and the stones? You all familiar with it? You're familiar with it. You're familiar, yes? Yeah, most of you are. Okay, so I'll say it. Maybe I'll send out a little video on the group, so I can, because most people have heard it. And I want to repeat it, but I will send it out Bezrat Hashem. I think it's worthwhile because it really does fit in over here. Oh, someone sent me a message. The concept of make haste slowly. I like that. Thank you, Dave. Very good. Okay, so where was I? The Chachamim also applied this same praise back at Shlomo HaMelech, who made this statement, that he was very quick in building the Beit HaMikdash, and he didn't act lazy and push it off. So too they were dashed Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, interestingly enough, I would have, if I were writing the sefer, and I didn't, obviously, and he didn't ask my opinion, I would have given a different example for Moshe Rabbeinu, a very different example, which shows even more his zvizut. Moshe Rabbeinu was given a command by Hashem. It's told to go to war with Midian, and after that, you're going to die. It's the end of your life. So it says that Moshe went to get warriors, and basically by the pasuk, the language pasuk, that he had to force the people to give warriors to come fight because they didn't want to go to war because they felt that they did, then Moshe Rabbeinu was going to die. But it says, Hashem says, Nikom nikmat b'nei Yisrael, that I want you to take revenge on behalf of my people Israel. And he says to the people, Nikom nikmat Hashem. He wants to take revenge on Hashem's behalf. But Moshe Rabbeinu knew that he was going to die shortly after the battle with Midian. There are other situations where in Tanakh, where a person is told, don't go to a certain area, and if you do, end of your life. Or don't return to a certain area, end of your life. So what do you not do? You don't return, you don't go. So that's what I would have maybe used that, but he didn't ask my opinion. It's fine. Now, you may not have paid attention to this or noticed this, but when you look at the words, the adverbs that are used in describing the actions taken by our avot and imahot, the concept of speed is always in there. Listen to this. Avram Katuv, it says, Vayimaher Avraham Ohela. Avram hurried to the tent. Tell Sarah, Vayomer Mahari, hurry. Vayiten al anar vayimaher. Rivka vatamaher vati'ar kadah. She hurried and took the jug of water down. Yechen amru b'midrash vatamaher aisha. Melamed shekol ma'asehem shel tzadikim b'mehirut. All the action doesn't mean they rushed through it, but they did it with zrizut and a passion. Ashelo yitnu hefsek zman lo el hatchalat mitzvah lo el hashlamata. They didn't leave any break of time in there, neither for at the beginning of the mitzvah that came and the opportunity arose. They did it, and they made sure they saw it through to its conclusion. Avraham Avinu was wealthy, right? He could have easily had his servants do all his bidding. But he did the running. He stood over them and watched, make sure they didn't meet and look together. He had his wife hurry up to make the food. Rivka is doing things bizvizut. But and you'll see that the person whose neshama is lit up, so to speak, with the service of Hashem, will definitely not be lazy in his doing mitzvot. But instead, his actions will be like the quick moving fire. I'm going to explain that in a minute. And he will not rest, he will not be quiet until the action is completely done. I debated whether or not to do this, but I'm not going to do it. When I've taught this before, I usually take out a match or a candle. I'm not just going to have to use your imagination. Okay, this is the candle, right? We all know that the fire is at the top, right? Just picture that. Now, what happens when I turn this sideways? Where's the flame go? It goes up. When I turn it down, the flame still tries to go. The flame is always trying to go up, always. Now, that's the nature of how Hashem created the nature of fire. But what is also, we say, Kiner mitzvah Torah, or we talk about Ner nishmat adam. What's this connection to fire? The connection is he uses the concept here, Tnuat Esh. Fire always seeks its creators. Water is heavy, right? It's always seeking to go down, seeks its lowest level, which is why if you have a leak in the first floor, it's going to be found on the bottom floor as well. Fire, on the other hand, always tries to go up. And that's what we're trying to emulate, the idea of Ish. When we're doing, it's not just the idea of feeling a fire within yourself to serve Hashem, but it's also in a metaphorical sense, how we also, all the she'ifa, the striving is always to be heading upwards in our service of Hashem. Ve'omnam. Oh, I actually want to mention one more thing. Some of you are familiar with Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch takes each mitzvah, tells us what the mitzvah is, when it applies, to whom it applies, how to do it, the source for the mitzvah. And there is a repetitive saying in many, many of the mitzvot. And the first time I think it appears is the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, is Acharei HaPeulot Nimshachim HaLevavot. After one's actions, the heart is drawn. What does that mean? Let's take a regular worldly example first. I use many times I use recovery from addictions in the talk about Mesilat Yesharim. There's an expression within addictive counseling and groups of addicts. There's an expression, a few, fake it till you make it is one of them. What does it mean, fake it till you make it? Go through the motions. We would say, mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. We would say this, that if you do something enough over and over, eventually it sinks in, right? As I mentioned already, that at least 2 or 3 times in different classes recently, what the Kutzker Rebbe said about these words of Torah should be alevavacha. Why not in your heart, in Shema, instead of on your heart? Because sometimes our hearts are stone and we don't want to hear it. And then eventually our hearts open up and the words fall in, right? So sometimes we do things, but eventually these things may actually fall into place. I was telling someone recently that when I went to Shalavim with Yochev's brother, Shalom, actually, he was in his 2nd year or 3rd year, I think, when I started my 1st year there. I got there Elul, right, like a good little boy, and I hated it. Yeah, what did I do from sitting and learning all day? And I went to Yeshiva High School, had English studies and Hebrew studies, and then we played after school, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I knew it's what you do, and I really wanted to do it. But, and I was homesick. I'd never really been away from home much as a kid. And I didn't say, oh, I want to leave, but I kind of was hoping that there'd be a reason for me to leave at some point early on. I really didn't like it. You didn't get that sense. But my Rebbe said, just stay in the Beit Midrash. You're not going to learn, just stay. Just sit there, read something else. If you don't want to learn the Gemara, do something else. Okay, so I had this whack job of a chavruta. should live and be well. And eventually we parted ways, thank God. And I started to make friends with other guys and found that some New Yorkers actually were nice. It's not what I, just joking. New York, Chicago rival, what can I say? And some of whom are still close to this very day. And
you can tell that you're from Chicago because no New York would ever say that Chicago's in the
do you know that this, they wouldn't even acknowledge it exists? Okay, let me put it this way. There's one guy whose name I wouldn't say. I met him. He was just, hi, this is said to this guy, hi, this is Zeb. He's from Chicago. His first statement out of his mouth, oh, is the fire out yet? I'm like, okay, really? The Chicago fire of the 1800s? That's where you're going? Thank you. Anyways, so I stayed in the Beit Midrash. I listened to my rabbi. And I stayed and I stayed. And eventually I was there till 1 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to, and I loved it. I missed it for a long time. So, you fake it till you make it. You just go through the motions. I'll give you an example that happens. I know for a fact that it happens, that especially among the youth, but with adults as well, a person will not bench. Don't say Birkat Hamazon. As I mentioned to you, I think you're like, I've heard kids or people say, why are you benching? It's not Shabbat. So, okay, so they won't bench. But so you go to someone's house, it's not Naim, they're still benching. So you sit there, okay, you go through, you say what you want to say, you say some of it. But then you realize that you go to another person's house, another person, okay, maybe I really should be doing this. But after you go through it a while and do it a number of times, whatever the mitzvah might be, whether it's benching or something else, that, okay, you start to connect to it. And that's the thesis behind a lot of the mitzvot that are the mitzvot ma'asiyot, the ones we do physically, as opposed to the ones we do with our head. The chovot halevavot, which is a different book, the Bachi ibn Pakuda, which are, we have to remember that we have 2 tracks in our life, minimum, which are when it comes to mitzvot, things we physically do and things that we do with our minds and our heart, right? Loving Hashem, remember, it's not ve'ahavta, it's ve'ahavta. The accent on the last syllable. The Haftat Hashem Elokecha is a mitzvah that we're supposed to love Hashem. Hashem loves us. He wants us to love him back. We don't do that with we show it with our physical actions, but the actual mitzvah is internal. It's what's called one of the chovot halevavot, or the duties of the heart. Okay, so he's telling us over here that when we do the tnuot, when we do the movement and the actions, number one, it should be done with zrizut. Number two, it should be done with a burning fire. Can we do that with every single mitzvah? For most people, that's nearly asking the impossible. It really is. Tachlis, think about it. If you had to do every single mitzvah with an absolute burning to serve Hashem, for most people, that's not reality. For some of those actions, it should be. And that's what he's saying. Again, no one's telling you that your entire life is going to be able to be to such a level. But it doesn't mean you can just say, well, I'll just do it and finish it up and get it done with. You look like you want to say something. No? Okay. So want to stop here. I'll pick up next week with this. We'll finish the chapter, Bezrat Hashem, and we'll see how do we actually do this. In other words, how do we get into this mode of Zvizut? That'll be the next chapter, Bezrat Hashem. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Yeah.